And with that said, I want to bring our first speaker up here. This guy is truly an amazing leader in the business. I've become good friends with him over the last few years. He's another one of those people I met in Springfield in that outing that we all went to, about 25 of us. What I've seen him accomplish, I mean, I've been in this business 18 years. I've seen some amazing people come through this business. I ain't never seen anything like what this guy's doing, changing the industry. I always call him the Tiger Woods of the insurance industry because he's completely changed it. People, I don't know if you've probably ever heard that comment, oh, that guy moves the needle. Well, this guy is the needle, truthfully, right? He is the owner of Safe Harbor Insurance, Bobby Brock Insurance, the creator of the Go Gurus platform, the creator of the largest insurance group on Facebook with almost 10,000 members, Medicare Gurus Forum, that I'm sure we're also all part of. But I want to get him up here to teach you guys and coach y'all. He's going to pour into y'all. Please give me a giant welcome for my good friend, Mr. Justin Brock.
Yes. Boom. Hello. How are you all doing today? Awesome. Awesome. That's what I like to hear. Listen, I thought I was going to be late coming in here because I went and made like 3 bathroom breaks when Tony was doing that. Who's been in a room where I took a bathroom break right in the middle of a speech? It's happened a couple of times. When I was in Iraq, I drank a lot of Rippets, so I'm that gotta go right now guy from the commercial at 34 years old. It's not a good look. But I've tried my best to hydrate and take care of that beforehand so you can get me for a full 40, I think, 40, whatever. All right, so today I'm going to talk about mindset, which is funny because I don't think people know me as the mindset guy. I may have even actively talked about how mindset isn't as relevant as some people talk about it online. There's a lot of mindset coaching that goes on in the world that I don't value all that much, but my mind has changed a little bit over it, and so I want to tell some stories and set the stage for why I do think that mindset matters, okay? So first, I'm going to tell you guys a story about how I got into the insurance industry. So when I was in the Marine Corps, and I joined in 2006, went to boot camp in 2007, and went to the East Coast, and I was in a pattern where I would deploy. If I deployed, it would be to Iraq or the Middle East, and it was long deployments. My wife and I got married right away. She was with me the whole time, and towards the end of my first enlistment, we had my son, Jackson, and I didn't know if I was going to stay in or not. I went back and forth on that. Anybody that's ever served probably did the same thing. You go back and forth on whether you want to stay in or don't, or you don't. Sometimes you're so sold that you're going to, then some things happen and you're like, no, I'm going to get out of this. But when that's what you're used to, you came in at 18 years old. All you know on how to provide for your family is the military, and you have a kid, which you know nothing about. And to tell you this, the OBGYN, we were real worried about having a kid. And we go and we talk to him, this guy, this Dr. Tinga was his name. And he says, listen, guys, there are far less capable people in the world who have had children. And Tempest was insulted, but I was like, he's right. I got this. So it was a good story. I didn't plan on telling that, but it was so funny to me. But anyway, so we have a son, and I'm right up at that re-enlistment point, and I'm like, I have to re-enlist because I don't know how to take care of, I don't know if I can provide for my family. I had a lot of doubt. And so I did. I re-enlisted, and we go to Japan. They give us 3 sets of orders. One was Yuma, Arizona. We could choose from them, right? Yuma, Arizona, Beaufort, South Carolina. I'd already been on the East Coast. Beaufort was in a pattern of going to Afghanistan every 6 months on, 6 months off, or Okinawa. So I chose Okinawa, and they sent me to Iwakuni, which is mainland Japan. When we get to mainland Japan, I chose that route because I thought, okay, I won't be deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan, which I didn't want to do with a newborn baby, So we get over there, and instead, in Japan, what they do is they do 2 months gone, 2 months back, 2 months gone, 2 months back, 2 months gone, and it'll be like South Korea, Philippines, Thailand, Australia, Guam, Iwoto, like all these places, they'd send us a lot. And when you have a kid that's 7, 8, 9 months old and you leave for 2 months, they pretty much forget who you are. So that was actually pretty tough on me with him. And so towards the end of that enlistment, we got probably got a year before, we had my daughter Grace. And so at that point, I started thinking, okay, I'm going to get out and I'm going to get into the insurance industry. Why was I going to get into the insurance industry? I had seen my dad go, like from the time he got into the business when I was about 10 or 11. By the time I was getting out of the Marine Corps, he had gotten to where he was making probably a few $100,000 a year. So I saw him go from us being kind of poor to him being, strong middle class. So I thought, well, I can go kind of replicate that, and then I can call on him for advice or stuff like that. I had this confidant, and I didn't really want to go get a job. People that are in the military don't often like to go get jobs. They're just, they're tired of taking the orders all the time, right? So I said, I'm going to go to the insurance industry and try this out. But my goal originally was just to provide for my family. All I wanted to do was get out and make $60,000 a year. That was my goal. I said, if I can get out and I can make $60,000 a year, then I can keep my family at the same quality of life that they're used to. We could have a nice little house. We can afford our groceries. We can have health insurance. Like that was my goal. That was a goal. It's pretty modest. But what happened was, I don't know if I'll do that. I fell in love with the process because there was no time in my life where I'd been so directly rewarded for my own efforts in a business. I hadn't been in a real business, right? But the military, there's a reward system, but there's a lot of politics to it. And there can be politics in this business too as you scale. But on the individual independent agent side, it's really not politics. It's, if you go out and talk to a lot of people and get in front of as many people as possible, you make more money by helping more people. That was it. And that easy reward system was super intriguing to me. And so I became kind of obsessed with it, which does come back to my default character anyway. I mean, one of my first jobs, I was a paint mixer at Lowe's. I used to dream about mixing paint at night. I was pretty obsessed with it. So I do kind of get obsessed with what I'm doing, but this was so much different because the reward was like there when you put in the work, right? So I fell in love with sales and marketing, and in 3 years, I was making 10 times what I made my last year in the Marine Corps in the industry as an independent agent. And so that was like, there's a huge mindset shift that happens in there. Like your expectation is, I just want to provide for my family, and I don't want to be gone every 2 months and my daughter forget, who I am or not trust me or not have a good relationship with my kids and my family, right? But that mindset definitely shifted over time as I started to see more and more success in the industry. But in the marketing side, I also started realizing that at scale, there was either the potential to help more people, which also led to the potential to help, or to make more money, right? I can only help so many people. So it's so funny that some of the older, and I say old not by age, but by how long they've been in the industry. There's some people in here that are older by age that aren't in the industry that long. The people that have been in the industry for a long time, some of them think about the industry as like, I can't share any secret, I can't talk to anybody. And I'm like, there's 60 million Medicare beneficiaries now. Like, you're not going to write them all. Like, even the biggest call center's not going to write them all. So I'm not worried about that. So we got to where we started sharing a whole lot of information, and I think some of you've seen some of that, right? But we had some issues in growth. So about 3 years in, I decided that I wanted to officially partner with my dad and try to marry our organization together to help grow it as one S corporation. And we had a lot of issues with nepotism in the beginning because there were other people involved in this that were not contributing at the same rate, that maybe tried to treat the business like a personal little piggy bank versus having to, versus treating it like a business. A business is meant to grow. A business in itself is not a person. It's not one person. It's meant to grow. And so when people get in it and get emotional and start, not allowing the business to grow, it doesn't do, what it's supposed to, right? So I was dealing with this nepotistic environment and still trying to grow it. Thankfully, I'm a stubborn mule, and I kept on persisting through, a lot of the headwind that we had in this. And I had a lot of help along the way as we would get more people like Stephen in there. And then, of course, my wife, Stephen Martinez, everybody. And then, of course, my wife, to keep allowing me to do what I was doing and encouraging me through the process was very, very helpful for sure. But I was a stubborn mule, put my head down, kept plowing through, and eventually persistency paid off, and we were able to create an environment where there really is no nepotism involved in it anymore. We were able to install this great foundation for growth, and it was past an individual agent, effort. And what happened then is this was like the end of 2020 when really the main problems of our organization, there's still problems, but the main problems of our organization hindering growth were eliminated, and we have seen huge growth. There's several things that happened there to see huge growth, but the main thing was everybody got out of our way, and our staff ended up quadrupling in size in the last 18 months, and we were able to plug into the appropriate mentorship over time, which changes. And we will hit 10 million in revenue as an organization in the next 12 months. And that is it's basically tripled in 2 years, we'll have tripled that revenue. But it's just people getting out of the way and allowing us to do what we do best and, know what we could have done all along, right? But the reason I wanted to get us up to here is because when you have a business that gets to certain thresholds, there are what Brandon Dawson calls breaking points in business. There are things that come along that you don't foresee. There's also concepts that happen like you hit a point and you never prepared for it. So if you listened to Danielle yesterday, she said, I always knew I was going to grow, I would make $1 million in this industry. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but Danielle makes way more than that now. Way more. Well, I imagine, and you heard her say she has a coach too, right? I imagine she had the preparedness to say, I'm going to make $1 million, but didn't know that she would get to the point she is now, where I think they said they're hiring another 100 people, so they have like a 200-person, organization. Like, I don't think she ever saw that. And so that mindset, the mindset necessary to shift into that type of entity where you're managing so many personalities, you're installing C-suite executives in between, where you're creating a management system where you don't have to be involved. Like talking to Josh a minute ago, he bought a business where he has 2 new employees in the business that he's never met because there's someone in between him, hiring them, putting them in the machine. That is a different level, right? And there's a whole lot of different levels that goes into this based on technology, hiring, culture, all these different concepts. And so your mindset has to change big time. And mindset thresholds are different for different people. So like for me, one of the reasons I've always been somebody that may be hard on people that harp too much on mindset is because you have to watch out for this. There are people that want to sell you mindset training because they don't know anything else, and mindset training is easy to regurgitate, right? Do you believe that? So there are people that are going to listen to a whole bunch of Ed Milet videos and read a Tony Robbins book and then try to put out courses on how to train you to do something and then never grow on a real business. And that's why I'm hard on mindset training, even though I think there are times when you need it. I personally, and maybe like from listening to Danielle, did not need a mindset shift at all until recently. My default mindset was perfect to get us right to where we are. And then I started thinking, what the hell do I do next? Okay? And so mindset isn't, and so when I thought that, I thought, okay, now I need to go out and find somebody who's built a business bigger than this, reach some of these catalysts where they thought, what part do I scale? There's pros and cons to scaling any portion of entities. We've started projects and shut them down. We've started some and decided not to scale them past a certain point for fear of different things, like the point of diminishing returns and scaling certain lead models, or building out a call center at scale when you have to start taking on, less quality leads and have to worry about what the lifetime persistency of a client is. There's factors that go into like, what do I do next? Where do I put my money? And it's easy to say, okay, well, maybe I should just hoard it and not grow and sit here and not do anything. But you have to remember, a business is meant to do what? Grow. A business is not meant to sit there and allow you to hoard money. And if you do that, it will shrink. And this happens at different levels for different people. And for a lot of people, it's individual. So I was just talking to Chris Weir outside, and he was talking about the same concept. There's so many people, they get into the business, figure out how to cover their basic necessities, their needs, and they get comfortable at 60, 70, 80,000 a year, 100,000. It's different for everyone, right? And then they don't scale anymore. They withdraw, they stop investing in themselves, and they just kind of like let everything trickle in. There's a point where someone will come in and take from you what you have because you're not growing, you're not putting things out there in a way that keeps those people coming to you, right? So this happens at individual points, it happens at mid-level points, and it happens all the way up until you're the biggest tycoon in the room, all of you guys get 1099s, that come from companies that are, multi-billion-dollar multinational health companies like Humana, Cigna, Aetna. These companies are huge. They don't stop growing. They're massive, and they're continuously under attack for huge market share loss. That happens at every level of business, okay? So when I hit this threshold of what do I do next, I looked for business coaching. And in business coaching, what I found was all business coaching starts with mindset training. And again, I was a little reluctant, like, oh my God, here we go again. I just bought into this massively expensive, coaching program, and they start talking about mindset. But after going through it and persisting through it, when you pay a whole lot of money for something, you're going to go through it even if you hit hurdles and you're like, is this really what we're talking about today? I know this. But it became very important and obvious to me that I did have to alter my mindset of what's possible because I do heavily believe in manifestation. But like what Danielle said, she came in, I have to say that because she kept talking about it, and it's so true and it's parallel to what I'm trying to talk about. When you are aiming for right away, if I said, I know I'm going to have $1 million business, like duh, then you have that. But if you didn't know you're going to have a $100 million business or a $500 million business, you don't know how to get past a certain point. And a lot of that is just in your brain. It's you start to get scared because you've already exceeded your expectations for yourself. And so a lot of it isn't about, I don't know what the next step is. It's about not being confident that you're going to make the right decision when all decisions will probably work to some degree, or they're a stepping stone to making the right decision. So, we talked about, I think at Medicare Con, I talked about how last year we tested a new advertising method, and I spent $240,000 on it, and I think I got like 2 or 3 calls. So sometimes we make bad decisions too, but that bad decision also made me learn something that, it's so funny. You ever learn a lesson, you think, I should have known that, like I understood that premise, but I went against my own gut and wasted some money or time. Well, we did that, but it just kind of it's kind of like something, but you test the opposite anyway. And sometimes you learn what you knew wasn't right. Sometimes you learn what you knew was right, but now you're really 100% sure of what you knew, right? So that certainty can help out as well. So that different threshold, or that the different mindset thresholds, are important to understand because you have to think about where do you envision yourself going, and that's where your mindset threshold is. Okay, so that's why there's so many people out there that do say 10x that, or think bigger, or create measurable and attainable. And sometimes when you think, if you don't know the SMART acronym, Stephen will tell you, I don't know all of them, but the measurable and attainable part is something that gets me. When you're creating goals, you want them to be measurable and attainable. Some people take that to the extreme and they make it overly measurable and attainable, where it's like, well, yeah, if you wake up and you talk to somebody every day, you're going to hit that. I'm talking about like another level that is measurable and attainable, but still outside the box. And then when you hit it, or you get close to hitting it, move the needle, I know I am the needle, so don't move me. Tony says I am the needle. Don't move me, move the metaphorical needle. Your needle. You have a needle, okay? All right, so different thresholds require different mentors or lessons to get past. So, I'm already harping on this, but when you hit certain thresholds in your business that ties directly into your mindset, they require different levels of coaching. And a lot of this is tied, it can kind of be tied to an economic ladder or trajectory, right? If my threshold is I didn't think I was going to get to 100,000, or I said I want to be a six-figure Medicare agent, I want to make 100,000, which, by the way, and I'm a big caveat guy, when people say six-figure, seven-figure, eight-figure, and they're talking about premium, like, you make sure if somebody's talking about premium or revenue. You're not a six-figure Medicare agent if you wrote 100,000 in MedSup premium one time. You're making like, I don't know, 25,000 or something a year. So you have to make sure people are talking about revenue. Somebody's talking about revenue. Revenue is important. And for people that don't think revenue is important, they're probably not running a business, because all the guys that work for me, do you guys want me to have revenue? That's how I pay you, so I think that they do, right? So revenue is very important. It's easy to pretend like you're in a nonprofit and you're just out to help old people. But you have to have money, to pay yourself, to cover your needs, and to pay your people. So, but these different thresholds require different mentors and lessons to get past. So if my threshold is 100,000, that's going to be a different level of mentorship than I need to say, okay, now I'm at 10 million. Because for me, I want the person who's been where I'm trying to go. Okay? I don't need the person who pretends that they've been where I'm trying to go, but I also don't need the person who is right where I'm at. I do think it's important to have peer groups that you learn from each other and you celebrate in each other's wins, but when you look for a mentor, you need somebody who's gone where you're going. Thankfully for you guys, there's a lot of people who have made 100,000, who have made 500,000, who've made $1 million. The hard part for me was finding the people that wanted to mentor you that had over $10 million in revenue. Most of them in our industry were in the FMO space, the big blockbuster FMOs, and they don't necessarily want to mentor you. So this is something that's very important. I'm not going to be hard on FMOs. We consider ourselves to some degree an FMO. There are other FMO representatives in the audience that do great jobs. But when you get advice from someone who has you in their downline, sometimes, and not everybody does this, but 90% of them do, sometimes the advice is biased. Okay? Sometimes they want you to believe something because they want you to do a certain thing, right? So it's okay to have an FMO and a mentor who's completely separate from that. And it's also okay to have an FMO and a mentor that's not even from this industry. Because now we have, I think when Danielle was talking about mentors, or some of these other people, when I talk about mentors now, they're not from the industry. They're not from this industry at all. But that's because I've reached this point where we're at 10 million in revenue, you have 30 staff members, you have 2,900 downline agents, you're trying to create a value proposition for so many people and figure out where the points of your business would scale in a way that makes you happy and drives revenue. That intersection, that's what you want. I don't want to drive, this is one of the mentors we have, he said he's going to stay away from, I think it was like in the precipice of COVID, he got together in an investors meeting, and the guy's worth, $100 million. And he gets together at this investors meeting where they talk about different ideas and where to park money and big investments. Not like stocks, but like, startups and actually investing into businesses and organizations. And, they were talking really heavily about how alcohol and pornography have done really well in COVID. And they're like, you going to get in on this? And he's like, absolutely not, because I need the intersection of what makes me feel good to be involved in and makes money. And so I'm not going to do that, right? And so it's very important that even within our business, you can grow a vertical that you don't feel good about. For instance, for me, like some of the call center growth that's happening doesn't make me feel good about like hiring, an overseas telemarketer in Pakistan to berate phones to death, violating all kinds of TCPA compliance laws, and forwarding it over, and we get it for $35, and then we transition it. Now, do I know there's a lot of people making money doing that? Yes. I just don't know if I want money that bad. Like, it doesn't feel like it adds value to the market to me. And so I think in the long run, like, am I killing the industry that my kids might be involved in one day by trying to chase profits today? And I could always have a cop out for that and be like, well, if I make $250 million, they won't have to work. Well, I know that my kids will not be happy not working and rich, because there's a lot of people that when they have money and they don't earn it, they don't feel good about it, right? So I want to keep the industry going strong, and I want to add value to it, and I want to make sure that we're making money, turning a profit, but doing it in a way that adds value to what we're doing. So talking about the mentorship side of things, we have a ton of things that we do to mentor people in different ways and bring them along. Christian has a ton of different ways that he mentors people and brings them along. There's other people in here that do as well. It's very important in the early phases. You just get people to plug into, but make sure you have one or two. Early on for me, coming to conferences and meeting people that I wasn't doing business with, some of them I ended up doing business with. For instance, I do some business with Tony now. Quite a bit, really. We do, not all like contractual, but even like with him being involved in Medicare Con and us doing some contractual stuff with him. But even before that, Tegray Moot with Heartland Financial Group, I met him at the first MedSup conference I attended, started doing a lot of business with him. What was cool was early on, I was able to get a few different FMO relationships, and then anytime I would have questions about what to do next, I'd ask all three of them. And I found out I got an array of different answers, but those different answers and that polling would help me kind of make a decision, because you could kind of find some common sense intersection in what they were saying, right? And you can do that now too. You can do that from an FMO standpoint. You can do that from just finding general mentors. And we're kind of in a thank you economy shift in our industry that is a little behind the curve. This industry just moves I think a few phases behind like maybe the real estate industry or some of the other ones that all have their own problems too. But the thank you economy concept is like people putting out free information, knowing that in return somewhere down the line they're going to get business back. So a lot of the stuff that we throw out there, like that Facebook webinar that we did the other day, we're just throwing it out there because we know at some point someone's going to appreciate it in a way that they do business with us somewhere else. But the cool thing for most people in the industry now is there's a tremendous amount of information for free. So if you're at zero, you don't necessarily have to go and pay for anything. You can go out and get the free information and then put one foot in front of the freaking other, make money, and then tap into that next level. Okay, this is the biggest frustration for me, is seeing people digest tons and tons of information and not put one foot in front of the other. Okay, if it's go to one event, go to two events, go to three events, or digest this, digest that, at some point turn that off and go do what they're telling you to do. Okay, that's a huge problem in our industry of people that want to consume it thinking that there's going to be an easy way. I want everybody to repeat after me, and you may have heard me say this before. Everything works a little, nothing works a lot. Say it right now. Everything works a little, nothing works a lot. Okay. That is absolutely true. Now, there is the rule and the exception. There's the exception that if you chase the thing that works a little, eventually you'll find a honey hole. You know what a honey hole is? You'll find a honey hole. Guess what? The honey hole will dry up. If you think there's somebody else out there that has a honey hole right now and you want to figure it out, he's probably almost dried it up already. By the time you're aware that they found one, they've already dried it up. Okay? I've found some that I didn't dry up fast enough and somebody else dried it up because, repeat after me, marketers ruin everything. They do. They do. So, and you're all marketers. If you are not marketing, if you are not partaking in your own marketing efforts, whether it's marketing yourself, whether it's putting out content, whether it's branding, whether it's paid advertising, there's different levels of marketing. And what you can do as an individual or a small agency right away is just some of the content style. Get your brand synchronized, but don't worry about doing everything that, imagine if I was trying to, from the get-go, make sure all my hex code colors were accurate the way Humana has theirs, and take my brand as serious as they do, where they're going to have certain vector files that they have to send you and have compliance reviews to get it approved and all that. Like, that's a level of brand integrity that most of you don't need. You know, it's an important concept over time to evolve and understand what a brand means, but a brand doesn't mean sit around and take branding courses. I have 3 graphic designers that work for me full time, and they are real nerdy on branding. They're big on it, right? I understand more about the effect of a brand than they do. They understand branding means the integrity of the brand, the size, the sizes of it, the right types of vector files. What are the hex code colors? This font is not an Adobe font. They understand that crap, and I'm glad to have them for it because it was never my forte. But when you get into that level of scrutiny over something, it isn't all that important as much as that you have something and you're putting it out there. Okay. There was one more thing that I wanted to say, and that is that there's a lot of talk about recession right now. There's a lot of talk about, the future of like our market and all markets really. So the good thing about our industry is there's some stability to it because your market is based around Social Security. But that doesn't mean that there's no shift at all that happens in a market downturn. And how many people in here have been in business in this industry on their own, not like working for a carrier and now you're independent, but in an independent business capacity or as an integral cog in a machine that you're part of, like an actual business in the independent side, for more than 10 years? Okay, how many of you have been in it for less than 10 years? Okay, so all of you have seen nothing but amazing markets. Like everything's just been improving, okay? Unless you went too heavy into ACA for 1 year, which now has turned around and pretty good. But if you have been in it and you haven't seen that, and I haven't either. I've been in a complete uptick, thankfully. But I understand that a market shift can change certain things. Make sure you have your footing and foundation, because it actually can be even better for the people that can stick around through it. Because what happens is every time there's a little bit of fear in the marketplace, some people go back and get jobs. Some people, think about the real estate industry, okay? Where you live, and let's say it's not a metro area. If you live in a rural area, it's easier. You know the people that stuck it out through the housing crisis, and now they're some of the biggest real estate agents and real estate brokers often in the area because they stuck it through that. Everybody else leaves, all the weak people leave, and the strong people end up staying, and they create a brand because they stood the test of time and they were there when there wasn't a lot of competition. So if you can stay through any of that happens, and I'm not saying it is going to happen. I'm not a doomsdayer. I'm all about positivity in the marketplace, and timing the market is an impossible thing to do. But I do think it's important for you guys to understand that we are in a good industry to be in during a downturn. But if you're brand new, or you're a startup, or you're less than a couple years in, it can look scary. But if you can stand through anything like that happens, you'll actually come out much better. And I don't think anybody's really talking about it as it affects our industry. There will be some things that happen that have people kind of holding on, and there will be a lot of opportunity within it if you're willing to stick around. When ACA first came around, there's so many agencies I'm aware of that it just was signed into law, and some of them are like folding up and selling. Think about the multiples they missed on selling to AmeriLife and Integrity these days. Those guys, man, they sold those books for pennies on the dollar, but they had no idea. But it was a lot of scared market stuff that was happening. And that is something that I talk to my team about, and we talk about market downturn. Thankfully, I'm very positive that we would do very well in a market downturn or an uptick, because if we have a downturn, we have the capacity to fill the void that will be created by all the people that are leaving it to go get jobs. And right now, we're a little bit flooded with brokers over the last couple of years, to be honest. So anyway, look, I don't know what my time is. I don't think
You're good. We got time for questions unless you got some more.
Anybody that wants to ask questions that I could answer, I'd love to answer any for you. So what do we got? Who's got a question? Don't be afraid. I'm not a very scary guy. Some people think I'm an asshole, but I'm really not. I don't know why people think that. I'm maybe abrasive online or something.
There we go.
Tracy Lounsbury.
Yeah, why do people think you're an asshole?
This is a great mystery of my life. I don't really know. It's something I put off. I'm working on it. I'm going to one of my coaches is a therapist now, trying to make me less of an asshole, I guess. I think it's the Marine Corps thing. I'm not sure. It's the jarhead. There it is. All right. Any questions we have about our practice? Anything? Yes, Brian, right? Brad. But I just met you. I got the BR right.
Asshole.
I'm sure that this is very important to you as a very strong, somewhat local agency still, that you develop relationships with carriers. Can you talk a little bit about that? So how do you go about that? What's your approach and what's your advice for independent agents in that space?
Yeah, so carrier relations, the good news is if you're in an area where Medicare Advantage is prevalent, those people want to make relationships with you. They often just don't know who to make relationships with. They'll be aware of the biggest agencies based on who's written business with them. They're not always available of up-and-comers, and you'd be surprised how willing to talk to you they are. So if you have an FMO, one of the things that they should help you with is finding who your local broker managers are. And you should absolutely be setting up, going to their meetings that they have. It's very, very important. The broker managers, when Medicare Advantage expanded heavily into our territory, were very helpful. And some carriers, by the way, their marketing dollars are given out at the local level. They're not given out from the top down. And so sometimes when you're looking for your upline for some sort of marketing support, it actually is coming from the local carrier reps. And so you may be missing out on free money. Not that you should wait around for free money to invest in your business, but if you can get somebody to give it to you, take it and add that to what you're already investing. Some insider info, which some of you probably know this, is Aetna and United Healthcare are very much local focused. They're very focused on giving money at the local level. They're not focused on giving money to the top of the hierarchy and letting it trickle down, whereas Humana, maybe more on the trickle down side of things. Humana is actually probably one of the best at giving money, but it does trickle down, so that's where you'd have to work through the FMO. And also, it's important to note that if you're not producing a lot, I'm not saying don't build the relationship and take what you can get, but you should produce and then ask again, because when you're producing and asking, you're definitely going to get more attention than when you're not doing anything. Right? So production should come first. I believe, again, if they're going to give you $2,500, $5,000 at the local level and you haven't really done any production, take it and try to work with it. But if, I really wish there was more integrity, no pun intended, in the marketing dollar system to where it was completely tied to actual production. Because right now it's just kind of a free-for-all. Like people are making promises, and I would say, and Tony may have more insight to this at a larger FMO level, but I would say a large portion of the people are completely full of shit in how many apps they tell their FMO and their carriers they're writing.
True.
Like they're doubling what they're writing, sometimes even more than that. Like they're saying they're writing double what they actually are. And so that's why it gets harder and harder to get money, because people aren't being honest with what they're doing or what they're capable of. So,
Got one here.
Roy? Oh, Rebecca. I'm going to come back to you, Roy. Ladies first.
So, Justin, when you're a six-figure agent, you have one set of problems. And then when you move into the seven-figure agent territory, you have a whole new set of problems. So as an agency transitioning from one level to the next, what are maybe two key problems you would recommend somebody keeping an eye out for, and maybe how to solve them before you get embedded in them?
Yeah. So for me, a big thing is, and we're still working through a lot of problems ourselves. I think it's just a constant, but hiring before you need people is very important, because there's this thing happens when you hire someone where you actually have to train them to do what they were hired for, and it becomes more work in the beginning than it is help. But if you wait until you absolutely are at your wit's end on how much you need somebody to help you with factor X, whatever it is, retention, sales, whatever, technology, if you wait until you're at the breaking point already, and then you hire them, you have even less time or capability to train that person. And as you scale, you want other people within your organization being the ones that are training those people, and you need to hire that person before they're at their absolute wit's end. So another thing to worry about when you scale into seven figures is key man dependency. So it's really easy to get one person in your organization that you're completely dependent on, and that's great that they're so vital, but what if something happens to them? What if they decide to leave? What if they're toxic for your work environment and you have to get rid of them? And then it can become this issue where someone is a terrible person for your overall organization, but you're dependent on them for the work that they do. This is something that really people should watch out for, is that sometimes the person you need to fire the most in your organization is really good at their job. That's something people don't realize. They don't always suck. Like most people think, oh, you fire the people that suck. Well, sometimes the person that needs to be let go, unfortunately, the most, is somebody who is very, very good at what they're doing. They're good at sales. This is actually probably even more prevalent in the sales role, because sometimes the best salesperson is an asshole and he's not good to work with, or she. It happens to women too. I've had some tenacious women that are amazing salespeople and would be like fantastic independent agents on their own, but they are terrible for a work environment. I've had it, and I've had men that way, and there's no color or gender that is immune to this. This is just people in general. It's a personality type, and so something that can really help. And some of you guys have been through some of this, going into personality testing training, like learning more and more about intense DISC assessments and stuff. But like this is something that you guys have to understand. I hear people reference it a lot from maybe SWOT, where they say, oh, you're a yellow, you're a green. That's not what that's for. It's for learning who you are so that you can become who you need to be, and it's for learning how to communicate with other people where they are. It's about the communication between two different colors or the same color. It doesn't matter if it's a color, a letter, whatever those identifiers are. Those personality tests are something I used to think were bullshit, but it's because most people don't use them the way they're designed to be used. They're designed to be used to create effective communication between people that think differently. And they're good for husbands and wives too, because most husbands and wives think very differently, and it helps you improve that communication. I'm a stubborn mule, for instance. I have to try my best to pick where to be stubborn and where to give in, because it's not always time to run through a wall with your head down. So eventually you'll run into a wall that will bust your head wide open. It's better to find people that you can communicate with that can build a door for you and you can walk through it, right? So, Roy?
Looking back, when you were just beginning to scale your business and growing, is there anything that you would do differently as you look back when you were just beginning to say go from 100,000 to 200,000 in your?
Yes. When something was working really, really well, I would have scaled it faster. I got into Facebook early on and had some success in it when it was really easy. I didn't realize how easy it was. If something is working exceptionally well, and what I mean by that is if your cost to acquire a client is less than a third of what your first year commission is, and it pays commission year after year after year, you should try to get as much out of that as possible. That's one of those honey holes. I didn't know that the first couple of years, and kind of thought, when some of that success hit me, that like, oh, I found this will work forever, and it doesn't work forever. So very, very, very important, that when something is working, to do that. Another thing that I would do is, without some of the issues that I faced within our own organization, I would I would have hired people faster. You know, people are a great resource, and you can't do things without them. And sometimes you hire them for one position, and they become more suited for another position, and that's okay. And another big mistake I made early on was we did as an organization. I'm gonna try not to take full responsibility for this, and there were some outside factors still when the nepotism was in there. But there was a time when there was a couple times when people were fired that they weren't good for the role they were in, but they were absolutely not lost to our organization. And the amount of time it takes to train someone to just like throw them out with the bathwater when you can move them into a different role and utilize them. Like if you find a salesperson and you train them and they're really smart, but they're not good at sales, like that's a perfect client retention person, right? It's a perfect administrative person. Or maybe eventually you get into being an FMO or a regional agency and you need somebody to do with contracting and licensing and all that. If they know all these concepts, it becomes easier for them to then communicate with agents or communicate with your clients too. So those are some things that would help. I don't know if that's exactly where you're at, but I'm sure somebody is.
All right, last one. Last one.
Last one.
So, Justin, Roy, by the way, you need a podcast. You got a great voice.
Roy does have a good voice.
You know, when we all first started all this, our communication was great. You got 2,900 people. How do you still do it? Because, you know, our time, we have like no time.
Mhm.
2,900 people. How do you respond back to everybody like you do?
Well, a team. And I'm a little bit obsessive in that. And if I start responding slower in the future, just know that I'm trying to also be a great father and husband. And so sometimes in the beginning, I do attribute like a lot of my early success was being extremely available. And I do believe that balance is awesome, but to some degree it's a myth. And in your paving the road days, something's got to give, and you got to figure out what that is. And it should not be your children or your spouse for sure, but it should be your downtime. You know, like if I'm let's say I'm growing my agency, and I have a schedule where if you guys map out your schedule, what do you do in a typical day, right? I'm working from, I'm showing up at the office at 8 a.m., we're having some meetings, I'm answering emails and putting out fires, I'm trying to schedule a whole bunch of important growth meetings in the afternoon, then I come home in the evening and I want to just relax and watch TV for a couple hours or hang out or whatever, and then I go to bed and the day starts over, right? So if you said, well, when did you spend time with your family in that day? Well, why don't you take away I needed to relax and do this? And because some people say they need to relax, if you really want what I have, then you don't have time to relax, to be frank. Like that's just a myth. Like you have to, to create that lifestyle you want, you have to give relax to your family, so that you can give everything else to your business. And then eventually the goal is to be able to create the infrastructure within where your team can take a lot of stuff off and you can do what you need to do in a way where you can go and take a 3-week vacation, where my wife still tells me I'm on the phone too much. And she's right. But that answering people is, I don't think there's a secret to it other than I'm very much about it. You can ask my team. I harp on them when they're not responsive, because I tell them I attribute a ton of my success to being responsive. It doesn't mean having the answer right now. It means responding and saying, I hear you. I'm working on this. I'm going to figure it out. Let me get you to the right person, or whatever that is, right? It's not just ignoring it until I have the right answer. That's a huge thing for me. But it is getting harder. And I've also struggled with the idea of turning over like my phone and accounts. Like Sid and Sean that work with me have access to our social media, but mostly they're posting to it. They're not responding to people, because I have an issue with having somebody else respond the way that I would respond. So I don't have a VA that responds to people, just so you guys know. One guy wrote me drunk the other night. I could tell he was drunk. And he was like, is this your VA, or send me a video to make sure it's really you and all this? And I sent him a voice text because I didn't want to send a video. I was like, no, it's me. Yeah, dab if it's live, right? I told Matt Murray he had to dab during his speech yesterday or he was a hologram. So, but anyway, that's the communication thing is just be tenacious about communication and, and then if you don't feel like you have the time, figure out where you're spending that time and try to cut something out that is getting in the way of it. And organize your day. I was a big nerd early on podcasts. When I was a highway warrior and I was running the houses, I started listening to back in the day, like Jeff Root, some other people. But I also would listen to productivity podcasts. Those are probably some of the best ones out there. Every time you're looking for a podcast, this is like the lead vendor telling you not to buy leads. We have an Insurance Gurus podcast, which I want you all to go and subscribe to, please. But when you're looking for podcasts, don't always think you got to look for a podcast that is about insurance. Sometimes insurance guys don't have the information you need. It can be someone else. Productivity podcasts that are out there are great. I used to listen to productivity ones and marketing ones were probably the ones that I listened to the most. And again, you guys are all marketers. You have to take marketing into your own hands or you don't really have a business. Sales and marketing is the core of what we do, and there are other parts of the circle of life in a business, but sales and marketing are the core, and it's 50-50, guys. One is not greater than the other, and I'll debate you on it all day long. One is not greater than the other. Sales and marketing are equal. You can't outsell your marketing, and you can't outmarket your sales, okay? So take that serious because you all think you're salespeople probably. You really need to be marketers and salespeople. All right?
There we go.
Appreciate you guys.
Give it up.